It began with silence. A quiet, tree-lined street in the suburbs of Charleston. Street lights glowing soft amber. Lawns manicured. No sirens. No shouting. Just a black woman in a navy blue dress, standing beside a sleek silver car. Phone pressed to her ear. Voice calm. Waiting on a tow truck. Then came the flash of headlights. Blue and red in the rearview mirror. 2 officers in a cruiser slowed, then stopped. Officer Brent Holloway adjusted his belt as he stepped out. Beside him, Officer Curtis Monroe cracked his knuckles. They weren't answering a call. They weren't looking for anyone. They were simply wondering, what is she doing here? Brent squinted. You see that? Curtis nodded. Middle of the night, alone, nice car, doesn't fit. Brent smirked. Let's ask some questions. They approached, casual in posture, cold in tone. Evening, ma'am, Brent said. Mind showing some ID? The woman lowered her phone. Her expression didn't flinch. Yes, officer, she replied, reaching calmly into her purse. She handed him a leather-bound card holder. Inside, a license. He read it slowly. Alana Reeves. Address matched the street. License valid. No flags. Still, Brent tilted his head. What brings you out here? My car broke down, she said. I live 2 blocks down. Curtis frowned. And you were just standing here? I was on the phone with the towing company. Brent clicked his tongue. Right. Mind stepping away from the vehicle? Her brow furrowed, but she moved. Hands behind your back, Curtis said. She blinked. Excuse me? We've had reports. Suspicious activity. Standard procedure. She didn't argue. Didn't resist. She turned. Hands behind her back. The cuffs clicked. The silence snapped. In the back of the cruiser, Alana stared out the window. Her face unreadable, her breathing steady, but inside, every alarm was screaming. Not because she feared what would happen next, but because she knew exactly what would. They didn't know who she was, and she didn't tell them. Not yet. Not here. Some fights are stronger when you let the injustice speak for itself. Curtis smirked through the rearview mirror. So, Miss Reeves, what do you do for a living? She looked him dead in the eye, her voice low, even. I listen. Alana Reeves wasn't born with power. She earned it. One late night, one closed door, one quiet insult at a time. She grew up in North Charleston, where the sound of sirens wasn't rare. It was routine. Her father drove city buses. Her mother worked at the post office. But it was her grandmother, Ms. Loretta, who gave her her first lesson in justice. If you want to change the rules, she'd say, you gotta learn how they wrote them. So Alana studied, quietly, obsessively, top of her class in high school. Scholarship to Howard, law school at night, legal clerk by day. The system didn't welcome her. It tolerated her. Supervisors smiled too tightly. Colleagues called her aggressive when she spoke clearly. Security guards stopped her at courthouse doors. Even when her badge was visible, she didn't scream. She didn't fight back with noise. She took notes. Every time they tried to shrink her, she expanded in silence. By 42, she had become one of the youngest black women appointed to the circuit court, Judge Alana Reeves. Still, she knew, in some eyes, she'd never belong. So she learned to carry 2 versions of herself. The one who wore the robe, and the one who walked through neighborhoods like the one last night, knowing she'd be questioned. She wasn't surprised when they cuffed her. She wasn't angry. She was deliberate, because this wasn't the first time. In law school, she'd been pulled over for matching a description. At 28, she was denied entry to a judge's roundtable because the hotel staff assumed she was event support. At 35, a bailiff once asked her to move from the judge's bench. Every time, she corrected them. Last night, she chose silence because something had shifted. She saw it in the way Officer Holloway gripped his cuffs. Not from protocol, but from prejudice. And Curtis Monroe? He didn't even bother to check her story. He just wanted her gone. That was the moment she decided to let it happen. Because if the system was going to expose itself, she'd let it, on record. Sitting in that holding cell, she didn't plan revenge. She planned a hearing, and not just one for herself. She thought of the others. The young men without a title in front of their name. The women without the law on their side. She thought of every time she bit her tongue to survive, and how this time, she wouldn't need to. Because soon, they'd know exactly who they arrested. And more importantly, who they'd have to answer to. The police report was short. 2 officers, 1 suspicious individual. 0 mention of her judicial title. No use of force reported. No dash cam footage submitted. No formal charges filed. Just a vague line. Subject detained and released without incident. That was it. No apology, no internal review. No acknowledgement that 2 officers had handcuffed a sitting judge on her own block because she looked out of place. Alana read the report 3 times. Each word, a reminder that the system still protected itself better than it protected the truth. But she wasn't surprised. What caught her off guard was the phone call that came 2 hours later. Judge Reeves, this is Chief Langford. His voice was smooth, practiced. I heard about what happened. Unfortunate misunderstanding. Rest assured we're handling it. Alana's voice remained cool. Are you? A pause. We've spoken to Officers Holloway and Monroe. They were unaware of your position at the time. And if I were a teacher, a nurse, would that have changed anything? Chief Langford didn't answer. Instead, he pivoted. With all due respect, Your Honor, it might be better for everyone if we let this one go. No harm done. That was the moment she knew. They weren't going to fix this. They were going to bury it. Just like all the other misunderstandings. Just like the teenager arrested for resisting while walking home. Just like the pregnant woman handcuffed at a traffic stop for failing to signal. Alana ended the call. Then she opened her calendar, scrolled to the upcoming docket. Her breath caught when she saw it. People versus Holloway and Monroe. Preliminary hearing. Presiding judge. TBD. She stared at the screen, then tapped her keyboard, clicked into the internal assignment portal, and submitted her request. I will preside. The next morning, her clerk, a sharp-eyed law grad named Camille, knocked gently on her door. You're really going to take the case? Alana looked up from her files. I didn't just take it, she said. I claimed it. Camille hesitated. There's going to be backlash. Maybe even political pressure. Alana nodded. I'm counting on it. Because now, this wasn't just about her. It was about every person they wouldn't believe. And if the courtroom was the only place where truth could speak uninterrupted, then she was going to make sure it roared. The courtroom buzzed with low murmurs. It was a mild Monday morning in Charleston Municipal Court. But something in the air felt heavier, like the room knew. Today wouldn't be routine. At the defendant's table, Officer Brent Holloway sat with his arms crossed. Next to him, Curtis Monroe tapped his foot impatiently. Neither wore their uniform. Civilian suits, pressed, polished, forgettable. Just 2 men who thought this hearing was a formality, a PR cleanup. Their lawyer leaned in. Just answer professionally, no grandstanding. The department has your back. Brent chuckled. This whole thing's ridiculous. We let her go. Curtis smirked. Yeah, she's just making noise because of who she is. Their lawyer stiffened. Careful, you're not in control here. The courtroom doors opened. Bailiff Camille entered and called out, all rise. Everyone stood. Brent looked up, bored, indifferent, and then she stepped out. Judge Alana Reeves, black robe draped across her shoulders like armor. No expression on her face. Only stillness and power. Brent blinked. Curtis's jaw opened slightly. Their lawyer turned pale. They didn't stand because they forgot. They stood because they couldn't sit. Alana moved slowly, deliberately. She ascended the bench without a word, adjusted the microphone. Then she looked down, not at the file, not at the charges, at them. "Officers Holloway and Monroe," she said, her voice calm, measured, unflinching. "It seems we've met before." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was suffocating. Curtis cleared his throat. "Your Honor, we didn't recognize you that night." Brent tried to add, "We were just doing our job." Alana leaned forward. "And is that job defined by skin color or suspicion?" No answer. She didn't need one, because it was already written. In the way they avoided her gaze. In the way their lawyer fumbled for his pen. In the way the gallery held their breath like they were witnessing history. "You didn't know who I was," Alana continued. "That's not the problem." She let the words settle. "The problem is, you didn't care." For a moment, the room was still. Then her gavel hit the wood. Sharp, final. Let the hearing begin. And with it, so did the reckoning. Alana could have stopped at the charges. Racial profiling, improper conduct, violation of civil rights. But something in her gut told her this wasn't isolated. So she started digging, and what she found was a pattern. Curtis Monroe had 6 complaints on file, all for unjustified stops of black and brown residents, all closed without follow-up. Brent Holloway, 3 use of force reports, 2 labeled inconclusive, 1 magically vanished with body cam footage missing. Every time their precinct covered it, Internal Affairs waved it off. And each time, they got more confident, more careless, more untouchable, until they cuffed the wrong woman. And that woman happened to know exactly where to look. In court, the evidence began to unfold. First, she admitted it into record. A sealed complaint from 2021. A 17-year-old boy detained for loitering. No charges. No explanation. Same street. Same time of night. Same 2 officers. Then came the testimony. Mrs. Holloway. No relation to Brent. She lived 2 houses down from where Alana had been stopped. She took the stand, voice shaking slightly. "I saw them handcuff her," she said. "I recognized her face from a newspaper article. I told them." They laughed. Murmurs in the gallery. Brent's lawyer objected. "Speculation, Your Honor." Alana raised an eyebrow. "Overruled." Next came the clerk from records. They confirmed that Brent had accessed multiple body cam files over the years. Conveniently, the most damning ones had been flagged for technical review, then never seen again. Alana leaned back. Each piece built the picture. This wasn't 2 bad decisions. It was a history, a culture, a system that taught men like them they wouldn't be questioned. Until now, outside the courthouse, whispers became headlines. Judge presides over case involving her own arrest. New evidence ties Charleston officers to previous profiling incidents. Inside, Alana stayed composed, but the fire in her eyes was unmistakable. Curtis stared at the table. Brent kept shifting in his seat, his confidence unraveling by the minute. Their lawyer leaned in, whispering, "They're coming after your records. All of them." Alana didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Because what once lived in sealed complaints and erased footage was now part of the public record. And justice was just getting started. The courtroom was no longer just a courtroom. It had become a stage. Cameras lingered outside. Reporters whispered in the hallways. Clerks traded glances like chess players anticipating the next move. And Alana Reeves, She stood in the center of it all. Still, calm, unmoved. But behind closed doors, the pushback had begun. It started with an email from the District Ethics Review Board, a formal inquiry. Is it appropriate for Judge Reeves to preside over a case in which she was personally involved? Then came the phone call from the Chief Administrative Judge. Alana, we're getting pressure from downtown. The mayor's office is concerned. Concerned about what? She asked. That this might turn into something bigger than just 2 officers. Alana's voice didn't flinch. It already is. Her chambers felt colder that day. Camille, her clerk, walked in holding a folder. They're trying to remove you from the case, she said quietly. Alana flipped it open. A petition filed by the officers' attorneys and signed by a coalition of former prosecutors. They claimed emotional bias made her unfit to continue. Alana closed the file without a word, but Camille added, "There's more." She placed another paper on the desk, a printout of a blog post. The headline screamed, "Activist Judge Using Courtroom for Personal Vendetta." No name attached, no author. Just digital poison spreading like wildfire. At home that night, Alana sat alone. Her TV off, her phone silenced, but the doubt still buzzed. Not fear, not guilt. Just that familiar voice, the one she'd silenced years ago, that whispered, "What if they bury this too?" She thought of every woman who came before her, of her grandmother, Loretta, who once marched for the right to vote, of Evelyn Parks, her mentor, who broke barriers so others could walk through. And she thought of every young black girl in Charleston who might be watching, waiting to see what she'd do. The next morning, Alana walked into court wearing navy instead of black. No robe, no bench, just a woman standing behind a podium. She called a press conference, and the first words she spoke silenced the room. "They tried to remove me, so I'm removing the silence." She held up a folder, thick with affidavits, sealed complaints, and missing video logs. "I am not just a judge," she said. "I am a witness to what this system allows when no one is watching." Cameras clicked, voices froze, and for the first time in a long time, people listened. The courtroom was packed, not just with press, but with people. Activists, community elders, former defendants whose names had once been buried under routine policing. Alana stood at the bench, this time in full robes. Her presence wasn't loud. It was immovable. Brent Holloway and Curtis Monroe sat at the defense table, eyes sunken, suits rumpled. Their lawyers looked like men preparing for a storm they couldn't outrun. The jury entered. The clerk stood. "Will the defendants please rise?" Brent stood first. Curtis hesitated, then followed. The 4-person read the verdict. "We, the jury, find the defendants guilty on all counts. Racial profiling, misuse of authority, tampering with evidence, violation of constitutional rights." Each word hit like thunder. Brent's jaw tightened. Curtis lowered his head, but there were no outbursts, just a silence heavy with reckoning. Alana looked down at them, eyes steady, voice firm. "You were trusted with power," she said, "and you used it like a weapon. You claim you were doing your job, but the job is to serve and protect, not to intimidate and erase." She paused. "I sentence you both to 12 months of supervised community service, mandatory racial justice training, and a permanent mark on your professional records." Neither man spoke, but the room exhaled, some in applause, some in quiet tears, others in disbelief that accountability had finally arrived. Outside, reporters swarmed the courthouse steps, but Alana didn't stop. She returned to her chambers, shoulders heavy. Camille met her inside. "You did it." Alana shook her head. "We did something. That's not the same." She sat at her desk, opened her inbox. There it was. An email from Judge Evelyn Parks, her mentor, her compass. Subject line, proud. The body was only one sentence. You stood taller than the bench. Alana smiled, but it faded as she clicked to the next message. Anonymous sender, no subject, no text, just an image. Her front door, taken from across the street. She stared at the screen. The silence in the room returned, but it felt different now. Not heavy with fear, but charged with purpose. This wasn't over. When systems break, they don't go down without throwing shrapnel. But for the first time, she wasn't afraid to be hit. 2 weeks passed. The headlines faded. The cameras disappeared. But Alana Reeves remained. In her chambers, the light felt warmer now. Not because the city had changed overnight, but because the silence had. People were talking. Clerks brought stories they'd never dared share. Law students emailed, saying, "Thank you. I didn't know I could be that brave." And yet beneath the calm, threats lingered. The anonymous photo of her home still lived in her phone. The mailbox still received the occasional envelope with no return address. But Alana no longer jumped at shadows. She stared into them, because the moment you shine a light on power, it flinches. One Thursday afternoon, she walked out onto the courthouse steps. No press, no podium, no speech. Just her standing still. Across the plaza, she saw someone familiar. A young black girl in a school uniform. She was staring at Alana, eyes wide, not with fear, with awe. Their gazes met. The girl smiled, and Alana smiled back. That night, she visited her mentor, Judge Evelyn Parks. The elder woman sat on her porch, tea in hand. "I watched the hearing," she said. "You did what I never could." Alana shook her head. "You opened the door. I just refused to let them close it again." Evelyn chuckled. "Child, the system will always try to shut the door. What matters is whether you wedge your foot in before they do." They sat in silence for a while. Then Evelyn asked, "Was it worth it?" Alana didn't answer right away. She looked out at the night sky. The same sky she'd stared into from a squad car's back seat. The same sky she'd stood beneath in front of a full courtroom. Finally, she said, "Ask me again in 20 years, when that girl out there takes my seat." Because this was never just about winning one case. It was about breaking the spell, about proving that power could be held accountable, even when it wore a badge, even when it sat behind layers of silence and paperwork. So if you're still watching, ask yourself, what would you have done in her place? Would you have stayed quiet? Would you have walked away? Or would you have stood up, even knowing the cost? Because justice doesn't begin with laws. It begins with people. People who refuse to let the system whisper when it needs to shout. If this story moved you, don't let it end here. Like, share, comment. And if you believe in justice that listens, speaks, and remembers, subscribe. Because real justice doesn't echo once. It echoes for generations. Sometimes justice doesn't arrive with sirens. It walks in quietly, sits behind a bench, and looks like someone they never saw coming. If this story stirred something in you, a memory, a question, a fire, don't keep it to yourself. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Like the video if you believe silence should never protect injustice. Subscribe to KaYi for more stories that don't just entertain. They wake something up. Because here on KaYi, we tell the stories others try to bury. And we'll keep telling them until the last echo of silence is replaced by truth.